Nathan Carter sat at his polished oak desk, the glow of his laptop screen casting sharp shadows across his face. The office was quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional clink of ice in his untouched glass of bourbon. Spread before him were the latest employee reports for Brew Haven, the coffee chain he built from a single shop into a regional empire of 14 locations over the past 8 years. Once his pride and joy, the chain now felt like a weight, pressing against his chest. Complaints were piling up, customers griping about slow service, inconsistent drinks, and surly staff. Sales were dipping at half the stores, and employee turnover was spiking, especially at the flagship downtown location. Nathan's jaw tightened as he scanned the numbers. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just a bad quarter. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair, now flecked with early gray. At 38, Nathan had poured everything into Brew Haven. He'd started as a barista himself in his early 20s, scraping by in a cramped cafe while dreaming of something bigger. That first shop, a rundown spot in Seattle's capital Hill, had been his gamble, a leap from a dead-end job to a vision of community, quality coffee, and a workplace where people felt valued. He'd made it work, growing the chain through grit and instinct. But somewhere along the way, he'd lost the pulse of his own company. The reports told him the what, but not the why. District managers swore everything was under control, their emails polished and optimistic. Too polished. Nathan wasn't buying it. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. A text from Emily, his Q and oldest friend. Board meeting. Tomorrow. They're pushing the sell if Q3 doesn't turn around. You ready? Nathan's stomach churned. Sell Brew Haven? The idea was unthinkable. Yet the board had a point. Their main competitor, Urban Grind, was eating their lunch, opening sleek new locations with aggressive marketing and lower prices. Nathan had seen their latest ad campaign plastered across bus stops, smiling baristas, trendy vibes, and promises of coffee with a conscience. Meanwhile, Brew Haven was bleeding customers, and the board was losing patience. Nathan stood and paced to the window, staring out at the city skyline. Rain streaked the glass, a typical Seattle evening. He thought back to the early days, pulling espresso shots himself, joking with regulars, knowing every employee by name. Now, he spent his days in meetings, buried in spreadsheets, disconnected from the grind of the shops. The district managers were supposed to bridge that gap, but their reports felt like smoke screens. If something was breaking at the ground level, he wouldn't find it in a PDF. He needed to see it for himself. An idea sparked, bold and a little reckless. Nathan stopped pacing, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. What if he didn't just visit a store as the CEO, announcing his arrival with a clipboard and a handshake? People cleaned up their act when the boss was watching. No, he needed the raw truth, the kind you only got when no one knew you were looking. He'd go undercover, pose as a new hire, and work the counter. The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through him, the kind he hadn't felt since he signed the lease for that first shop. Nathan returned to his desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up the data for store number 1, the downtown flagship. It was their busiest location, pulling in the highest revenue, but also the highest turnover. Complaints, there were sharpest long wait times, rude staff, botched orders. If the rot was anywhere, it was there. He leaned forward, decision made. He'd started store number 1, but he couldn't just walk in as Nathan Carter, the name on their paychecks. He needed a disguise, a new identity. Ben Walsh, he muttered, testing the name. Simple, unremarkable. He ditched the tailored suits for jeans and a t-shirt. Let his stubble grow. Maybe even wear glasses he didn't need. The staff at store number 1 had never met him in person. Most employees only knew him as a signature on corporate emails. It could work. He grabbed his phone and dialed Emily. She picked up on the second ring, her voice crisp despite the late hour. "Nathan, you okay? It's past 9. I'm going undercover," he said, cutting to the chase. "Starting at store number 1. New hire. No one knows who I am. I need you to keep it quiet." There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Undercover? Like what? Undercover, boss? Are you serious? Dead serious? Something's wrong. I'm not getting the truth. From reports. I need to see it myself." Emily sighed, but he could hear the grudging respect in her tone. "You're crazy, but okay. I'll handle HR. Make sure your application goes through. What's your alias?" "Ben Walsh. Start me next week. And don't tell the board. They'll lose it if they find out," she warned. "Especially with urban grind breathing down our necks." "Did you see their new location opening 2 blocks from store number 1? Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. "Yeah, all the more reason to figure this out fast." "Fine, but don't get caught. And don't do anything stupid, like firing someone on the spot." "No promises," Nathan said, half smiling. He hung up and leaned back, his mind racing. This wasn't just about saving the company, it was personal. Brew Haven was his legacy, proof he could build something real, something that mattered. He wasn't about to let it crumble. The next morning, Nathan stood in front of his bathroom mirror, scissors in hand. His dark hair, usually neatly trimmed, fell in uneven clumps as he gave himself a rougher cut. He rubbed a hand over the stubble he'd let grow for a week, then slipped on a pair of cheap, non-prescription glasses. The reflection staring back wasn't Nathan Carter, CEO. It was Ben Walsh, a guy who blended into the crowd. He swapped his press suit for a faded t-shirt and jeans, grabbed a warm backpack, and headed out as he drove to store number 1. The weight of the plan settled in. He wasn't just risking embarrassment. If the board and the media caught wind of this, it could tank his credibility, and urban grind would pounce on any sign of weakness. But the alternative, sitting in his office while his company bled out, was worse. He parked a block away, took a deep breath, and stepped into the rain. The downtown store loomed ahead, its familiar Brew Haven logo glowing through the drizzle. Inside, he knew, was the chaos he'd read about. Overworked staff, broken systems, and a manager who might be the root of it all. Nathan Ben pushed open the door, the bell jingling above him. The smell of coffee hit him like a memory, sharp and bittersweet. A wiry man with a clipboard, presumably the manager, glanced up, briefly before looking back down. "Ben Walsh?" The man asked, barely making eye contact. "Yeah," Nathan said, keeping his voice neutral. "New trainee. Great. We're slammed, so don't screw up." The man waved him toward the counter, already turning away. Nathan nodded, slipping on. An apron. He was in. Whatever was broken here, he'd find it. And he'd fix it, no matter what it took. The bell above the door of Brew Haven's flagship store jangled as Nathan Carter, now Ben Walsh, stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee, undercut by the faint tang of burnt milk and cleaning solution. The downtown Seattle location was a hive of activity. Even at 7 a.m. customers crowded the counter, their voices a low hum of impatience, while the hiss of the espresso machine battled the clatter of cups and the shouted orders from baristas. Nathan adjusted the apron tied loosely around his waist. The coarse fabric, a stark contrast to the tailored suits he'd worn for years. His glasses, fake, slightly too big, slipped down his nose as he scanned the scene. This was store number 1, the heart of his empire, and it was falling apart. The manager, a wiry man with a pinched face and a clipboard clutched like a shield, barely glanced up as Nathan approached. "Ben Walsh, new trainee?" he asked, his voice clipped, eyes flicking to the schedule pinned to his board. "Yeah," Nathan said, keeping his tone neutral, his posture slouched just enough to sell the everyman act. Derek Walsh, the man. Sod, no hint of warmth. No relation, I assume? He didn't wait for an answer. We're slammed, and we're down 2 people. Get behind the counter, shadow someone, and don't slow us down. He waved Nathan toward the chaos and turned. Back to his clipboard, already dismissing him. Nathan bit back a retort. He'd expected resistance, but Derek's indifference stung. As CEO, he trusted district managers to keep tabs on people like Derek. Clearly, that trust had been misplaced. He slipped behind the counter, dodging a barista juggling 3 cups, and took in the scene. The setup was familiar grinders, steam wands, syrup bottles, but the execution was a mess. The espresso machine groaned, overdue for maintenance, and a pile of dirty pitchers teetered by the sink. Customers tapped their feet, some scrolling phones, others muttering about the wait. The energy was frenetic, but it wasn't the hum of a well-oiled team. It was survival. A young woman with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail caught his eye. She moved like a whirlwind, steaming milk with one hand while ringing up an order with the other. Her name tag read Sophie. She glanced at Nathan, her hazel eyes shadowed with dark circles. "You're the new guy, Ben?" she asked, her voice brisk but not unkind. "Yeah," Nathan said, stepping closer. "Where do you need me?" "Start with restocking cups," she said, nodding toward a shelf behind the counter. "We're drowning here." She didn't wait for a response, already turning to call out, "Grande latte, non-fat, for Jessica." Nathan grabbed a stack of cups, watching Sophie out of the corner of his eye. She was efficient, almost mechanical, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a lid. She'd been here since opening, he guessed. Maybe earlier. He made a mental note to ask her later, then scanned the rest of the team. A lanky guy. In his early 20s, name tag reading Ryan, was working the espresso machine. His movements were quick but tense, his jaw set as he pulled shots. He muttered something under his breath when the machine sputtered, spitting out a weak stream of coffee. "Piece of junk," he said, loud enough for Nathan to hear. Nearby, a woman with a loose bun and a no-nonsense expression wiped down the counter. Her name tag said Lauren. She caught Nathan staring and raised an eyebrow. "You gonna stand there or help?" she asked, tossing him a rag. "Wipe the syrup pumps. They're a mess." Nathan nodded, diving in. As he cleaned, he listened. The baristas snapped at each other, not out of malice but exhaustion. "Ryan, you forgot the caramel again," Sophie called, her tone sharp. Ryan shot back, "I'm doing 3 things at once, Soph. Cut me some slack." The customers didn't seem to notice, too busy checking watches or phones. But Nathan saw it all. A team stretched to its breaking point. Derek was nowhere near the front. Nathan spotted him through the open door of the back office, hunched over, his phone scrolling. A customer at the counter, a man in a suit, waved impatiently. "Can someone take my order?" he called. Sophie sighed, wiping her hands on her apron, and hustled to the register. Nathan followed, pretending to fumble, with the rag to stay close. "Sorry for the wait," Sophie said, forcing a smile. "What can I get you?" "Double espresso to go," the man said, glancing at his watch. "And maybe speed it up next time." "I'm late." Sophie's smile tightened, but she nodded, ringing him up. As the man stepped away, she muttered to Nathan, "That's the 3rd one today. Everyone's in a rush, and we're barely keeping up. How long's your shift been?" Nathan asked, keeping his voice casual. "Since 5, she said, not looking up. "Opening crew." Nathan glanced at the clock above the register. 9:30 a.m., 4.5 hours. No break, and the rush was only getting worse. "You get a break soon?" He pressed. Sophie let out a dry laugh. "Breaks? Good luck. Derek says we can't afford to lose anyone when it's this busy." Nathan's jaw clenched. He'd written the company handbook himself, mandatory breaks after 4 hours, no exceptions. Clearly, Derek wasn't following it. He wanted to march into the back and demand answers. But Ben Walsh wasn't the CEO. Not yet. As the morning rush intensified, the cracks in the operation became glaring. The espresso machine jammed twice, forcing Ryan to manually reset it, slowing the line. A customer complained about a cold latte, and Lauren had to remake it, muttering about the inconsistent steamer. The inventory was a mess, Nathan noticed. They were out of oat milk, forcing Sophie to apologize to a customer who stormed off. The trash bins overflowed, and no one had time to empty them. Worst of all, Derek stayed in the back, emerging only to bark orders or grab a coffee for himself. Nathan shadowed Sophie, restocking cups and lids, but kept his eyes on the team. Ryan was loyal, he could tell, but frustrated, shooting glances. At the office door, like he expected Derek to swoop in and save the day. Lauren, older and more seasoned, worked with a quiet efficiency but a guarded edge, like someone who'd seen too many promises broken. Sophie, though, was the linchpin. She kept the line moving, calling out orders with a calm that belied her exhaustion. But Nathan saw the signs, her hands shaking as she poured milk, her blink slow and heavy, like she was fighting to stay awake. "Hey, Sophie," Nathan said during a brief lull, wiping down the counter beside her. "How do you keep up with this pace?" She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You just do. Bills don't pay themselves. My kid's daycare isn't cheap, and I'm still paying off student loans from a degree I never finished." She gave a tired smile. "You'll get used to it, Ben, or you won't, and you'll quit like half the crew." Nathan's chest tightened. He'd built Brew Haven to be a place where people like Sophie could thrive, not just survive. Yet here she was, running on fumes, with a manager who couldn't care less. As Nathan restocked syrups, he overheard a customer at the counter, a young woman with a phone in hand, talking loudly to her friend. "This place used to be great, but now 20 minutes for a latte, and it wasn't even right. I'm posting this." She tapped her screen, and Nathan caught a glimpse of the Brew Haven logo on her post, along with a photo of the chaotic line. His stomach sank. A viral complaint could tank the store's reputation, especially with Urban Grind opening a new location 2 blocks away. Their sleek storefront, with its neon sign and promises of ethical coffee, was already drawing customers away. Nathan glanced at Derek, still in the back, oblivious. He wanted to intervene, to ask the woman to give them a chance, but Ben Walsh didn't have that authority. Instead, he turned to Sophie, who was wiping sweat from her brow. "Does Derek ever help out here?" he asked, keeping his tone light. She snorted. "Only when he wants to look good for corporate. Otherwise, he's managing from the office." She made air quotes with her fingers, her voice laced with bitterness. Nathan nodded, filing it away. Derek wasn't just a bad manager. He was a liability. And Sophie, Ryan, and Lauren were paying the price. As the line grew longer and the espresso machine groaned again, Nathan felt the weight of his decision to go undercover. He was in the thick of it now, and what he saw was worse than any report. Something had to give, and soon. The morning rush at Brew Haven store number 1 hit like a tidal wave. By 10:30 a.m., the line snaked out the door, customers shifting impatiently as the espresso machine screeched and the register beeped relentlessly. Nathan Carter, still playing the role of Ben Walsh, hustled behind the counter, restocking lids while keeping an eye on the chaos. The air was thick with the bitter scent of over-extracted coffee and the sharp tang of spilled syrup. Baristas darted between stations, their voices strained over the din of orders and complaints. Nathan's glasses fogged slightly from the steam, and he pushed them up, his heart pounding, not from the work, but from what he was seeing. This wasn't just a busy morning. This was a system on the verge of collapse. Sophie Bennett was at the center of it, a blur of motion as she steamed milk, called out orders, and slid cups across the counter. Her ponytail was coming loose, strands sticking to her sweat-dampened forehead. Nathan noticed her hands shaking more than they had earlier, her movements slower, like a machine running on its last fumes. He'd asked her about breaks in part 2, and her answer still gnawed at him. Good luck. Derek says we can't afford to lose anyone. Now, as he watched her fumble a lid, nearly dropping it, he felt a surge of anger. This wasn't just bad management, it was reckless. Ryan Mitchell, at the espresso machine, wasn't faring much better. The machine jammed again, spitting out a weak shot, and he cursed under his breath, smacking the side of the tamper. Come on, you piece of junk, he muttered, glancing toward the back office where Derek Walsh, the manager, had vanished yet again. Lauren Hayes, wiping down the counter, shot Ryan a look. Save your energy, Ree. That thing's been broken for weeks. And Derek's not fixing it. Nathan stepped closer to Sophie, keeping his voice low. You okay? You look like you need a minute. She forced a tight smile, not meeting his eyes. I'm fine, Ben. Just keep up with the cups, okay? Her voice was thin, strained, and Nathan didn't buy it. He'd seen exhaustion before hell. He'd lived it in his early barista days, but this was different. Sophie was pushing herself past the limit, and no one was stepping in. The line grew longer, and the complaints grew louder. A woman in a blazer, tapping her phone, leaned over the counter. I've been waiting 10 minutes for a cappuccino, she said, her tone sharp. What's the holdup? Sophie apologized, her voice mechanical. Sorry, ma'am. We're short-staffed. It'll be right up. She turned to Ryan, who was still wrestling with the espresso machine. Ree, cappuccino, priority. I'm trying, Ryan snapped, his frustration spilling over. The customer rolled her eyes, typing furiously on her phone. Nathan caught a glimpse of her screen, a social media app, the same one he'd seen. Another customer using in part 2. This place is a disaster, she typed, attaching a photo of the crowded counter. Avoid Brew Haven downtown. #coffee fail. Nathan's stomach twisted. That post was the second one he'd seen today, and if it went viral, it could do real damage, especially with Urban Grind's new location opening nearby. He glanced at the back office. Derek was still there, now leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone. Nathan's hands clenched around the stack of cups he was holding. He wanted to storm in, demand to know why Derek wasn't out here helping. But Ben Walsh didn't have that power. Not yet. The clock ticked toward 11 a.m., and the rush showed no signs of slowing. Sophie was moving slower now, her breath shallow, her eyes blinking hard as if fighting to stay focused. Nathan stayed close, restocking syrups next to her station. Sophie, seriously, he said, his voice urgent but quiet. You need to sit down for a second. I can't, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If I stop, we fall behind. Derek will flip. She reached for a cup, her hand trembling so badly it slipped from her fingers. The cup hit the floor, shattering into jagged pieces. Sophie froze, staring at the mess, her face pale. Before Nathan could react, her knees buckled. She crumpled to the floor, her apron tangling around her as she collapsed. The cafe erupted in chaos. Customers gasped, some stepping back, others craning their necks to see. Ryan dropped a tamper, rushing to her side. Sophie! He shouted, shaking her shoulder. Lauren froze at the register, her eyes wide. Nathan dropped to his knees beside Sophie, his pulse racing. Her breathing was shallow, her face ghostly white. Sophie, can you hear me? He asked, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at him. She didn't respond, her eyelids fluttering weakly. Move! A customer called. A man in a gray coat pushing through the crowd. Give her space. Nathan recognized him, a regular, maybe, but his tone was sharp, authoritative. The man knelt beside Sophie, checking her pulse. She's conscious, but barely. Call an ambulance. Nathan turned to Ryan, who was still shaking Sophie's shoulder. Ryan, call 911. Now. Ryan hesitated, his eyes darting to the office door, as if expecting Derek to take charge. Nathan's patience snapped. Do it! Ryan scrambled for his phone, dialing as Lauren pushed through to help. Nathan stayed with Sophie, his hand on her wrist, feeling her faint pulse. The crowd murmured, some filming on their phones. Nathan caught sight of the woman from earlier, still typing, her expression grim. This is going viral, he thought. Dread. Pooling in his gut. Derek finally emerged from the back, his clipboard tucked under his arm. He frowned at the scene, his voice cutting through the noise. What the hell's going on? She fainted, Nathan snapped, his voice tight with anger. She's been working since 5, with no break. How long has this been going on? Derek scoffed, crossing his arms. She probably didn't eat. She'd be fine. Let's not make a scene. He glanced at the crowd, his irritation clear. We're already behind on orders? Nathan's blood boiled. He stood, facing Derek, his hands curled into fists. She's not fine. She needs help. Call it in, or I will. Derek rolled his eyes. You're the new guy, right? Stay in your lane. This isn't your call. He turned to Lauren. Get her some water. She snapped out of it. Lauren hesitated, then shook her head. She needs more than water, Derek. She's been killing herself out here. The man in the gray coat stood, his eyes narrowing at Derek. I'm a reporter with the Seattle Post. I've been watching this place fall apart for weeks. And now, this? You're the manager? His tone was accusatory, his phone already out, recording. Derek's face reddened, but he shrugged. People push themselves too hard. Not my job to babysit. Nathan's restraint shattered. He stepped closer. To Derek, his voice low but sharp. You didn't even ask if she's okay. She collapsed in the middle of her shift, and you're worried about orders? Derek smirked, unfazed. She stayed because she wanted to. Not my problem if she can't handle it. Nathan couldn't hold back any longer. He ripped off his glasses, his posture shifting from slouch to commanding. The cafe fell silent, the weight of his presence shifting the air. I'm Nathan Carter, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. I own this company, and what I've seen today is a disgrace. The crowd froze. Ryan's mouth dropped open, his phone still in hand. Lauren's eyes widened, her rag falling to the counter. Derek's smirk vanished, his face draining of color. You're... What? He stammered, the clipboard slipping in his grip. You heard me, Nathan said, his gaze locked on Derek. I came here to see what's broken, and it's worse than I thought. You're letting my people burn out while you hide in the back. That ends now. The reporter's phone was still recording, his expression a mix of shock and glee. Customers whispered, some pulling out their own phones. Nathan ignored them, turning to Ryan. Is the ambulance coming? Ryan nodded, still stunned. Yeah, they're 5 minutes out. Good. Nathan knelt beside Sophie again, who was stirring slightly, her eyes half open. Hang in there, Sophie, he said softly. Help's coming. The paramedics arrived minutes later, their red lights flashing through the cafe's windows. They checked Sophie's vitals, confirming she was dehydrated and exhausted, but stable. As they helped her onto a stretcher, Nathan stood back, his fists clenched. The crowd parted, some murmuring sympathy, others still filming. The reporter approached Nathan, his phone lowered, but his eyes sharp. Mr. Carter, I'm James Keller. Can I get a statement? Nathan hesitated, then nodded. This shouldn't have happened. We're fixing it. starting today. He turned to the customers. I apologize for the disruption. Drinks are on the house. We're closing early to take care of our team. The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others still skeptical. Derek, still standing by the counter, let out a bitter laugh. You can't just shut down the store, rookie or not. Nathan turned to him, his voice cold. I can do whatever it takes to fix this mess. You and I will talk later. He addressed the baristas, Ryan, Lauren, and the others frozen in place. Clock out. You're paid for the day. Go home, rest. We'll sort this out tomorrow. The paramedics wheeled Sophie out, her hands limp at her sides. The cafe fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the jangle of the bell as the door closed behind her. Nathan took a slow breath, his mind racing. This wasn't just a bad day, it was a broken system, and he was done watching it crumble. The Brew Haven cafe was unnaturally quiet, the usual hum of orders and chatter replaced by the low murmur of departing customers and the faint creak of the door as the paramedics wheeled Sophie Bennett out. Nathan Carter stood behind the counter, his apron still tied on, glasses discarded in his pocket. His reveal as the CEO had left the room stunned baristas frozen, customers whispering, and Derek Walsh, the manager, pale and silent, clutching his clipboard like a lifeline. The reporter, James Keller, lingered near the door, his phone no longer recording but his eyes sharp, taking in every detail. Nathan felt the weight of every gaze, but his focus was on Derek. The man's indifference to Sophie's collapse had pushed Nathan past his breaking point. And this conversation wasn't going to wait. Nathan motioned toward an empty table near the back of the cafe, away from the remaining customers. Derek, he said, his voice low but firm, we need to talk. Now. Derek's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the baristas Ryan Mitchell, Lauren Hayes, and a few others who stood awkwardly by the counter, unsure whether to leave or stay. He forced a shrug, his bravado cracking. Fine, he muttered, following Nathan to the table. The clipboard hit the surface with a dull thud as he sat, arms crossed, his posture defensive. Nathan sat across from him, his expression unreadable. The air between them crackled with tension, the weight of the morning's chaos hanging heavy. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, a steady Seattle drizzle that did nothing to cool Nathan's anger. He'd come to store number 1 to uncover the truth, and what he'd found was worse than any report. A team pushed to exhaustion, a manager who didn't care, and a system he'd built failing the people it was meant to serve. Nathan didn't ease into it. What happened today can't happen again, he said, his voice steady but sharp. Sophie collapsed because she was overworked. No breaks, 10-hour shifts, and you didn't lift a finger to help. Why? Derek leaned back, his fingers drumming on the table. You think it's that simple? I'm dealing with a million things payroll. Schedules, supply orders, and corporate breathing down my neck about numbers. You try running this place with half the staff we need. Nathan's eyes narrowed. That's your job, Derek. You're the manager. That means ensuring your team gets breaks, stepping in when they're drowning, not hiding in the back while they burn out. Derek let out a dry laugh, his irritation flaring. Hiding? I'm putting out fires you don't even see. You think this job's easy? Half the staff show up late, the other half quit after a month. Sophie? She's good, but she pushes herself. I didn't force her to skip breaks. Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. She didn't skip breaks because she wanted to. She did it because you made her feel like she had no choice. You're supposed to lead, not let your team run themselves into the ground. Derek's face reddened, but he didn't back down. You don't get it. I've been here 5 years, longer than most of these kids. I got promoted because I kept this place running when no one else could. You waltz in for one day and think you know everything? Nathan's jaw clenched. He checked Derek's file before coming undercover, hired as a barista 7 years ago. Promoted to manager after 3 for his reliability. Reliability. The system was failing them, and Derek was the weak link. Nathan took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay in control. You're right, Derek. I don't know everything, but I know enough. I saw a good employee end up in an ambulance because this store runs on exhaustion instead of teamwork. So tell me, what exactly are you managing here? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're letting things fall apart and blaming everyone else for it. Derek's fingers stopped drumming. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. His eyes flickering with something that might have been shame, but was quickly buried under defiance. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said, his voice tight. We're understaffed. I'm doing what I can. Nathan let a beat of silence settle, his gaze unwavering. He thought of Sophie's pale face, her trembling hands, her quiet apology as she was wheeled away. He thought of Ryan's frustration, Lauren's guarded skepticism, the customers' complaints piling up online. This wasn't just about one bad day. It was about a culture that had been allowed to rot under Derek's watch. Nathan had seen enough. You're done here, he said, his voice flat, final, effective immediately. Derek's eyes snapped to his disbelief flashing across his face. You're firing me? He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Unbelievable. You spend 1 day playing barista and think you're the hero? Good luck keeping this place running without me. Nathan didn't flinch. I'll manage. I need someone in this position who gives a damn about their team. That's not you. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Fine, he spat, grabbing his clipboard and jacket. You'll regret this when your precious store crashes and burns. He stormed toward the exit, the door slamming behind him with a jangle of the bell. The remaining baristas watched. In silence, their expressions a mix of shock and cautious relief. Nathan exhaled slowly, turning to the baristas gathered near the counter. Ryan stood with his arms crossed, his eyes wary. Lauren's rag hung limp in her hand, her face unreadable. The others, a mix of part-timers and new hires, shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what came next. Nathan rested his hands on the table, meeting each of their gazes. I know things have been rough here, he said, his voice softer now, but no less firm. That changes now. No one's working another shift like today's. Ryan spoke up, his tone skeptical. No offense, but we've heard promises before. Corporates never even stepped foot in here until now. How do we know you're not? Just here for a day to look good? Nathan didn't blame him for the doubt. He'd been absent too long, trusting reports over reality. You don't, he admitted. But I'm not going anywhere until this place is right. You've got my word. Lauren crossed her arms, her bun loosening further. The last manager before Derek was good. Listened to us, kept things running smooth. Then corporate pushed her out to cut costs. You're gonna stick around long enough to make sure that doesn't happen again. Nathan nodded, respecting her directness. I'm here as long as it takes. And I want your input. What's broken? What works? What needs to change? No sugarcoating. A few eyebrows raised, but no one spoke. The silence wasn't trust. Not yet, but it wasn't hostility either. It was a start. Nathan's phone buzzed. In his pocket. He glanced at it. A text from Emily. His cue. Social media's blowing up. That reporter's post about Sophie's collapse is trending. Board's freaking out. Call me. Nathan's chest tightened. The post he'd seen earlier, combined with James Keller's recording, was spreading fast. Brew Haven's reputation was taking a hit, and Urban Grind would capitalize on it. He needed to act fast, but first, he had to stabilize the team. He stepped away to call Sophie's hospital contact, learning she was stable but needed rest for at least a week. She's on paid leave, he told the nurse. Whatever she needs, we'll cover it. Hanging up, he felt a pang of guilt. Sophie's collapse was a wake-up call. He should have seen the cracks in his company sooner as the baristas began clocking out. Their movements hesitant but relieved, Nathan caught sight of James Keller outside, talking to a customer and jotting notes. The reporter wasn't done, and Nathan knew the story was far from over. Derek's parting words echoed in his mind. You'll regret this, maybe. But Nathan was done letting his people pay the price for his absence. He rolled up his sleeves, ready to get to work. The rain had stopped by the time Nathan Carter arrived at Brew Haven store number 1 the next morning, but the gray Seattle sky hung heavy, mirroring the weight on his shoulders. The cafe's neon sign flickered slightly, a small but nagging reminder of the neglect that had crept into his company. Inside, the first baristas were unlocking the doors, their movements sluggish, the air still thick with the shock of yesterday's chaos, Sophie Bennett's collapse, Nathan's reveal as CEO, and Derek Walsh's firing. Nathan adjusted his apron, no longer hiding as Ben Walsh but stepping in as himself, ready to lead. He promised change, but promises were cheap. The team's guarded looks told him he had to prove it. The store wasn't yet open, giving Nathan a moment to assess the space. The setup was solid polished wood counters, industrial chic decor, but the details betrayed the dysfunction. A sticky syrup pump, an espresso machine with a faint rattle, a schedule board cluttered with scratched-out names. Nathan pulled a notebook from his bag, jotting down what he'd seen yesterday. No breaks, broken equipment, chaotic inventory. Fixing this would take more than a new manager. It would take a new culture. But first, he had to win over a team that had every reason to doubt him. Ryan Mitchell arrived, his lanky frame slouching as he clocked in. He glanced at Nathan, his expression wary but curious. "You're really running the show now?" he asked, grabbing an apron. "For now," Nathan said, meeting his gaze. "Until we get someone who can do it right." Lauren Hayes followed, her loose bun tighter today, her eyes scanning Nathan like she was sizing up a new hire. "No offense," she said, tying her apron, "but corporates never cared about us before." "What's different this time?" Nathan respected her bluntness. "I was too far removed," he admitted. "That's on me. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until this place works for you, not against you." Lauren didn't respond, but her silence wasn't dismissal. It was a wait and see. Ryan, though, crossed his arms. Derek wasn't perfect, but he kept things running. "You sure you can handle this without him?" Nathan's jaw tightened. Derek's negligence had nearly cost Sophie her health, but Ryan's loyalty hinted at a deeper story. Maybe Derek had been a friend, or at least a known quantity in a chaotic job. "I'll show you," Nathan said, keeping his tone steady. "But I need your help to do it." The morning rush hit hard, but Nathan was in the thick of it, pulling espresso shots, steaming milk, and wiping counters between orders. He'd worked the counter in his early days, and the muscle memory kicked in, though the pace was brutal. He made one change immediately: mandatory breaks. "Ryan, take 10, he said an hour in, nodding toward the back. Ryan hesitated, glancing at the line, but Nathan insisted. "We're not running anyone into the ground today." Ryan returned looking less tense, and Nathan rotated Lauren next. The baristas moved with a cautious rhythm, not yet trusting but following his lead. Nathan tackled the espresso machine next, calling a technician to fix the persistent rattle. "Should have been done months ago," the tech muttered, confirming Nathan's suspicions about Derek's neglect. During a lull, Nathan gathered the team for a quick huddle. "I need to know what's broken," he said, notebook open. "No filter. What's making your jobs harder?" Lauren spoke first, her voice clipped. "Closing routine's a nightmare. Takes 2 hours because no one's got time to clean during shifts. That's why the machine's always acting up." Nathan nodded, jotting it down. What else? Ryan shifted his weight. Supply orders are a mess. We run out of oat milk half the time, then get buried in lids we don't need. Derek. He didn't track it right. Nathan made another note-standardized inventory system, automated if possible. A part-timer, a quiet kid named Mia, piped up. Training's awful. New hires get thrown in with barely any help. That's why people quit. The feedback was raw, unpolished, exactly what Nathan needed. Keep it coming, he said. We're fixing this together. Not everyone was on board. Mark, a barista with a buzz cut and a scowl, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. This all sounds great, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. But you're just here for the cameras, right? CEO swoops in, plays hero, then leaves. You asked to clean up the mess. Nathan had noticed Mark yesterday, hovering near Derek during the chaos. A friend, maybe, or someone who thrived under Derek's hands-off style. No cameras, Nathan said, keeping his voice even. I'm here because I care about this place. If you don't believe me, stick around and see. Mark snorted, but didn't push further, grabbing a rag and half-heartedly wiping the counter. Nathan let it go for now. Trust took time, and Mark's resistance was a reminder of the culture Derek had fostered. Survival over teamwork. The bigger problem was the team's fatigue. Even with breaks, the baristas were drained from months of overwork. Orders came out. Faster today, but mistakes still happened. A wrong syrup here, a cold latte there. Customers weren't as vocal, but Nathan caught their sidelong glances, their phones out, likely adding to the social media firestorm sparked by Sophie's collapse. Nathan's phone buzzed relentlessly. A text from Emily, his cue. Check X, it's bad. He stepped into the back, pulling up the app. The reporter, James Keller, had posted a thread about Sophie's collapse, complete with a grainy video of Nathan's reveal. Brew Haven's CEO goes. Undercover finds chaos. The headline read. The post had thousands of shares, with comments ranging from sympathy for Sophie to outrage at Brew Haven's management. Never going back, one user wrote. Urban grinds better anyway, another added, twisting the knife. Nathan's chest tightened. Urban Grind was capitalizing on the mess, their account reposting customer praise with hashtags like #BetterCoffee. The board was livid. Emily texted, demanding a response. Nathan drafted a public statement on X. We failed our team and our customers at store. #1. I'm personally overseeing changes to ensure this never happens again. Thank you for holding us accountable. He hit post, knowing it wouldn't quell the storm, but hoping it bought time. Back at the counter, he caught Ryan scrolling on his phone, his face grim. This is everywhere, Ryan said, showing the post. People are trashing us. I know, Nathan said. We'll turn it around. One step at a time. During a lull, Nathan approached Lauren, who was restocking cups. You mentioned a good manager before Derek, he said. What made her different? Lauren paused, her guard lowering slightly. Clara listened. She'd jump in during rushes, fix schedules so we weren't killing ourselves. When corporate pushed her out to save money, things went downhill fast. Nathan nodded, the guilt from part 4 resurfacing. I should have caught that. I'm sorry. Lauren studied him, then shrugged. Words are easy. Show us. He smiled, faintly, respecting her challenge. Later, he called Sophie contact, confirming she was home, recovering but shaken. Tell her she's on paid leave, he said, and I'll check in soon. Hanging up, he thought of his early days at Brew Haven, opening his first shop to create a place where people felt valued. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost that. Fixing store number 1 was his chance to get it back on as the shift ended. The door jangled, and Sophie stepped inside. She moved slowly, her face less pale but still drawn, her hands tucked into her hoodie. The baristas lit up. Ryan rushed over. Lauren trailing behind. "You okay?" Ryan asked, his voice soft. Sophie nodded, managing a small smile. "Better. Just embarrassed." "Nothing to be embarrassed about," Lauren said firmly. "We're just glad you're here." Sophie's eyes found Nathan, and he motioned to a table by the window. They sat, the hum of the cafe fading into the background. "I should have seen it coming," she said quietly. "I kept pushing because I didn't want to let the team down." Nathan leaned forward, his voice gentle. "I should have seen it too. The way this place was running, it was bound to happen. I'm fixing it, Sophie. Starting here." She studied him, her fingers tapping the table. "You're really the owner?" He nodded. "And I'm sorry it took this to get me here." Sophie exhaled, a mix of relief and disbelief. I never thought someone like you would care about one store." "That's the problem," Nathan said. "If I'd been paying attention, Derek wouldn't have gotten away with this. You deserve better. All of you do." Sophie hesitated, then nodded. "What now?" "You rest," Nathan said. "Paid leave, as long as you need. When you're ready, we'll talk about what you want here." She raised an eyebrow. "You're paying me to stay home." "You earned it," he said, smiling faintly. Sophie returned the smile, small but genuine, and stood to rejoin her coworkers. As Nathan watched them talk, their voices warm and relieved, he felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead was long, but he was on it now. 2 weeks after Sophie Bennett's collapse, Brew Haven store #1 hummed with a different energy. The Seattle rain still drummed against the windows, but inside, the chaos had softened. The espresso machine, freshly serviced, purred smoothly as Ryan Mitchell pulled shots with practiced ease. Lauren Hayes called out orders with a steadiness that hadn't been there before, her loose bun now a tight braid, a small sign of renewed focus. Nathan Carter stood behind the counter, steaming milk for a latte, his sleeves rolled up. He wasn't just the CEO anymore. He was part of the team, at least until the store was steady. The morning rush was still intense, but it felt manageable, purposeful. Customers moved through the line faster, their complaints quieter, some even smiling as they left. Nathan had hired Ellen Cotter, no relation, a coincidence that made him smile as the new manager. Ellen, a seasoned leader from a rival chain, brought a calm authority that contrasted sharply with Derek Walsh's negligence. She jumped in during rushes, adjusted schedules to ensure breaks, and listened to the team's input. When she introduced herself to the baristas, her warm but firm handshake and promise to keep this place human earned cautious nods. Nathan watched her now, directing a new hire on latte art, and felt a flicker of relief. The store wasn't fixed, not yet, but it was on the right track. The baristas were adapting, though not without hiccups. Ryan, once loyal to Derek, had softened, his skepticism giving way to grudging respect. "You're not bad at this," he said to Nathan during a lull, wiping down the counter. "For a suit, I mean," Nathan chuckled. "I started like you, pulling shots and scrubbing pitchers. I'm just rusty." Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "I was gonna quit, after Sophie. But I'll stick around, see if this holds." Lauren, too, showed signs of trust. She'd taken Nathan's request for feedback seriously, suggesting a streamlined closing routine to cut an hour off the process. Mark, the holdout who challenged Nathan's motives, remained distant but less hostile. He worked his shifts, kept his head down, and didn't argue when Ellen enforced breaks. Nathan suspected Mark was waiting for proof the changes would last or for an excuse to walk away. Sophie returned part-time, her energy still low, but her spirit stronger. Nathan had made her a trainer, leveraging her experience to onboard new hires. During a break, she approached him, her hand steady. "Now, thanks for keeping your word," she said quietly. "I didn't think I'd come back, but this feels different." It's a start, Nathan said. You tell me what you need to stay. She nodded, a small smile breaking through. Deal. Nathan's phone buzzed as he wiped down the syrup pumps. An email, sender anonymous, landed in his inbox. You think you're saving Brew Haven? I know things you don't. Watch your back. The tone screamed Derek, the fired manager's parting threat. You'll regret this, echoing in Nathan's mind. Derek had been with the company long enough to know its financial weak spots. If he was leaking info to Urban Grind, as Nathan suspected, it could cripple Brew Haven's recovery. Nathan forwarded the email to Emily, his coup, with a note. Check into Derek, quietly. He'd investigate, but the team came first. Later, Nathan faced the board via video call, presenting his plan to roll out store number 1's changes, better training, automated inventory, fair schedules across all 14 locations. The board, still rattled by the viral post about Sophie's collapse, gave him 3 months to show results. No more stunts, one member warned, referencing his Undercover gambit. Nathan nodded, unfazed. He'd take the time he could get done as the shift ended. Nathan caught a customer, a regular named Clara ironic, given Lauren's story of the old manager posting on X. Brew Haven downtown's turning it around. Faster. Service, happier staff. Worth another shot. Hashtag coffee comeback. The post wasn't viral, but it was a start, a counterpoint to the storm sparked by James Keller's thread. Nathan smiled, rolling up his sleeves to help Ellen close. The team moved with purpose, not panic. Their chatter alight for the first time in weeks. There was a long road ahead, other stores, Derek's threat, Urban Grind's shadow, but Nathan felt grounded. Brew Haven was his legacy, and he'd fight for it. This story of Brew Haven is more than a tale of coffee and commerce. It's a testament to the power of empathy and leadership. Nathan Carter's journey from a disconnected CEO to a hands-on reformer shows that true change starts with listening, not dictating. Sophie's collapse and the team's exhaustion reflect real-world struggles, overwork, neglect, the grind of survival. Yet, the story's heart lies in its hope that one person's commitment can spark a ripple of change, that a workplace can be a community, not a machine. The lesson? Leadership isn't about power. It's about responsibility to see, to act, to care. We're all part of systems that can break or heal, and it's on us to choose healing. Want more stories of grit, heart, and transformation? Subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube or follow us on X for tales that inspire and challenge. Join us to keep the conversation going, because every story matters.